Okay, good morning. We are out here in the garden today and we are going to be doing some harvesting, and then we're going to head inside and we're going to do some canning. I'm going to be making salsa today. So we're going to need to get about 20 to 25 pounds of tomatoes, about 30 Serrano peppers, and then we're going to need some onions. So we're going to do some harvesting and we're going to go inside and I'm going to show you how I can. The garden's a little bit crazy and it's a wild jungle, but my husband has a funny ongoing joke that he thinks is hilarious. And he asks if the monkeys had taken me. So I think it's pretty funny. It reminds me of when they're in the jungle on Jumanji. So what we're going to do today is we're going to get in here, we're going to pick some tomatoes, and we're going to go to the other side of the garden, and we're going to also get some peppers and onions. So and then we're going to go inside and make some salsa. So everything is looking really spectacular out here. Tomatoes are going crazy. We're going to be able to make juice here pretty soon, and some tomato paste and tomato sauce and some stewed tomatoes. Those are my favorite things to can. So let's get going. We're going to do some harvesting and get everything picked. Okay, we are gonna head over here and get ourselves some onions and get through our row. These onions are Walla Walla sweets. We're gonna probably need, I would say, 5 or 6. So we'll just take these ones here on the end. These are pretty good size. Take this little one too. This one. All right, so we got our onions. Now we're gonna head over to the other side of the garden and get some hot peppers. Okay, we're here at the hot pepper bed. Look at our cilantro has dried up, and so this would be what you would call a coriander seed. But I'm gonna get out here and cut these off, and I'm gonna take these seeds off so I can plant cilantro next year. So on the end here we've got some jalapeños, so might take just a couple of those. Sometimes I just kind of decide as I'm going if it's hot enough as far as spice. I don't like it crazy hot. My husband prefers for it to be a little bit hotter, so sometimes I'll go and I'll do a couple batches, and I'll label one hotter than the other because I know I've put more peppers in it. And some of this is just a preference and flavor for yourself. So you just kind of got to figure out what you like. We're going to throw a couple of these pasilla peppers in here. They're supposed to be kind of smoky. Why not? We have a whole bunch of them. Okay. So we need, I'd say probably 20 or 30 serranos. So we'll just get to picking here. All right, so we've got, let's see, we've got our peppers in here. I was going to show you, I was going to kind of peek down here, show you what we got here. Set this bucket down. Look at this. You see those habaneros? I don't even know. We're gonna have to do a batch that is hot fire probably. So anyway, we've got lots of habaneros. I was contemplating doing like a habanero pineapple or a habanero peach salsa and trying that out and canning it. I've never done a fruit salsa. I mean, I guess tomatoes are fruit, but I've never done an actual fruit salsa. So let's get these buckets inside and I'll show you what we're gonna do. I ventured out and I bought a couple new cookbooks. So I did go ahead and I've got the more extensive version of the Ball cookbook, and this has all kinds of things from fruit, preserves, canning fruit, canning vegetables, pressure cooking, things like that. So this is a really good guide to have. It's a little bit expensive. It's about $25, but it's worth it. If you can find it secondhand, even better. But I've been looking and looking and looking, and I finally decided I was just going to go ahead and purchase it because I hadn't been able to run across another copy of it. And then I did get this one this year. This is a guide to pickling. I've done pickles and things like that before, and those are referenced in the Ball cookbook as well. But I wanted to see, there's a little bit more fermentation and things like that in this cookbook, so that's why I picked this one up. I also have a couple old cookbooks from my mother that have no pictures in them, and those all have a section on canning as well. So we're gonna go ahead and get our vegetables and tomatoes washed and get ready to start processing our salsa. Okay, we've got our peppers and our tomatoes washed. We will kind of judge if this is enough as I'm going, and I will, what I like to do is be able to fill up this pot right here with salsa. So it's a pretty good sized pot. I don't know how big it is, but this is what I like to use. So it seems to work. Okay, so what I do is I preheat my oven to 375 degrees, and we're going to cut these up and put them on a cookie sheet, take off any bad sections. So like this has a bad section, I'll just cut the end off that and give that to the chickens or the pigs. And we'll get them all cut up. We'll run them through the oven at about, for about 20 minutes per batch. And then we will run them through the blender. I have a Ninja blender. I just pulse it for a couple seconds, then we'll put it in the pot and we'll bring it up to a boil. So while we're doing all that, we're gonna get our jars and our lids ready and get prepared for the actual canning section. So I will show you what I've got going on here. Okay, so I use this knife. It has a serrated edge and it cuts the tomatoes really well. And then I have a really large cutting board that has like a well in the side. This helps catch the juice and doesn't make quite as much of a mess. So we got this, we've got our cutting board, and then I'm gonna grab a large bowl to put the cut tomatoes in, and then a couple cookie sheets so we can get going. The other thing I have is I just have some buckets, and this is what I put all the scraps in. That way we can take them to the pigs or the chickens, depending on who it gets served first. I do have some older cookie sheets. This is because it gets really sticky. The sugars from the tomatoes seem to create like a sticky film on the cooking sheet. So these are really nice because it doesn't matter to me if they get ruined or not. So, and then I have my other ones for cookies. So this is what we're gonna use. So what I do is I just take off the top, I'll cut it off, and then I'll cut them in like quarters or halves, depending on the size of the tomato. I put them in a bowl here, and then we'll get this bowl full, and in the meantime we're going to preheat our oven and start cycling these tomatoes through the oven. Okay, so we've got a whole bowl full of sliced up tomatoes, and then I've also taken the tops off some of the peppers. I kind of just cook these at one time, so I'll show you how I lay them out on the baking sheet. I lay them out face up, which seems to work really well. I just fill the whole tray up, throw in some peppers. So what the goal is here is we're going to try to get these, I'm going to cut that one in half. We're going to just soften these up enough to run them through the blender or the food processor, depending on whatever your preference is. I have also done this on the smoker and made like a smoky salsa, but you got to be really careful because it kind of makes a mess of your grill. So we're going to get this whole sheet pan filled up with tomatoes. I do not salt anything because I put salt in my jars when I get ready to process them, and it's just a good way to measure the amount of salt that I have in my recipe, and that way I don't over salt anything while I'm cooking it. So we've got our tray here. Just fill it all the way up, make sure we get most bang for our buck. We've got our tray here. We're going to pop that in the oven 20 minutes, 15-20 minutes, soften up these tomatoes and peppers, and then we'll keep chopping over here. We're going to get the rest of our tomatoes chopped, our peppers chopped, and we're going to get our garlic chopped so we can bake that off too. And then also we're going to cut up our onions and clean them. So we're going to get this going, and I'll show you what it's like when this batch comes out of the oven. Okay, we've got our onions here from the garden. We have a couple large ones, a couple small ones. So I would say this on average is probably, if you add them all together, five large ones. 5 large onions. So we're going to quarter these up, and we're going to put them in the pan. See, we got all those tomatoes chopped. We're going to put our onions in there, and so that we can bake them off as well when we got room in the oven. Okay, so I have peeled, I don't know how many things of garlic we got here. 3, 6, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 cloves of garlic. And as my daughter says, the more garlic, the merrier. She prefers it to have a ton of garlic. I did not make it out of town. Sometimes when I'm making canning, I will just buy at Costco the already peeled garlic. So it comes in a big bag like this, and it's like $10, and it's like 2 pounds of garlic already peeled. So that's really nice when you're doing canning because it's a little tedious to peel all the garlic. Okay, so now as you can see, so we got our garlic, we've got 2 huge bowls of tomatoes. We're waiting for our first batch. We got about 1 minute and 39 seconds left on our timer for our first batch to come out of the oven. So we'll take a look at that when it comes out of the oven, and I'll show you what I do with it at that point. Okay, so here's our tomatoes out of the oven, and you'll see that they're just kind of soft to the touch. So are the peppers. Excuse me. This is going to work perfectly for our salsa. We're just going to pop them in the blender or the Ninja for just a couple seconds, and we're going to pulse them. So I'll get my Ninja out and I'll show you how that's done. Okay, so we got our Ninja blender here, and we've got our tomatoes. We're just going to take a spatula, and we're going to take a spatula, and we're just going to put our tomatoes and our peppers in the Ninja. You can kind of already see where the sugars start to burn on your pan on the side, so this is why I use an old pan for it, but you know, you guys can use whatever you want. Okay, I'm going to leave this sit here for just a second while I load up my pan again. So we're going to load up our pan and get it back in the oven. Okay, so our pan is set. We're going to pop this back in the oven really quick so we can get it going. 15-20 more minutes. And then we're going to take our salsa right here that we've started, and we're going to take this over to the blender, get that blending. In the meantime, we're going to turn our pot on low. So, because we just want to keep it nice and warm as we're going. Okay, so we're going to take this on over and we're going to blend it. And it's not even a blend, it's just basically a quick pulse. Okay, so here's our Ninja. We're going to click that on. We're going to just turn it on here, and we're going to pulse it just once or twice. Basically, we just want it enough to cut up our peppers. Alright, let's take a look at that. The hot sometimes makes it into a section. Alright, so that's what that looks like. It smells delicious. So we're going to take this over to the pan, and we're going to put it back, we're going to put it in our pot. Okay, now here's our pot. You can use any kind of pot you want. This is just the pot that I found is a nice size to be able to process one batch. So I'm just gonna dump this in here. does sometimes splash. And then I'm just gonna set my blender aside and I will reuse that again. We got this on low. So as we start going through, I will be filling this whole pot up. In the meantime, what I've got out is I've got my water bath canner out. You do not need this. You can use a large pot on a stove, so you don't need this. But it makes it really nice because if you're lacking on stove space or countertop space, this is just something that you can store away, and it plugs into the wall. So we're going to use this today, and this will hold 8 pints at one time or 7 quart jars. So it's a 21 quart capacity, and I believe I just bought this on Amazon. So, and I don't remember exactly how much it was, maybe $80. But I've had it for probably 3 or 4 years now. And when I'm doing salsa and juice at one time on my stove, it's really nice to have this separate. So we're gonna get this set up, get some water in it, get it rinsed out, and then also I'm gonna load the dishwasher with some jars. They're already clean. I'm just gonna run them through to sterilize them. I've got this out of the box now, and I just wanted to show you what it looks like on the inside. I'm just running some water through it because I'm gonna rinse it out. But it has 2 racks in it. This one can be used if you're going to use quart jars, and then this one will be used for pint jars. So, and you can see right here, it's like it kind of shows you where 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So, and then we'll fill it up so that the water is 1 inch above our jars. So, and then it sits on this base, and this base is what plugs in, and this is the heating element right here. Works really well, but you gotta some knobs here. It says low, medium, high canning. So this canning is what you're gonna turn it to when you're ready for a full rolling boil, when you have all your jars in there. In the meantime, we'll probably keep it right about here in this area, so that we can keep it ready to go. I'll show you what I mean when I get to that section. Okay, here's what we got. We've got 12 wide mouth jars and 8 regular jars. I just store these in the garage when I empty them out. And so I'm gonna get these washed out with a hot soapy water, run them through the dishwasher, and then I'm also going to round up 12 wide mouth lids, 8 regular lids, and then also some seals to go with these jars. So I'm gonna do that while our tomatoes are cooking. Okay, so I've got here third to the last batch of salsa. I'm gonna put this whole thing of cilantro in there and blend it up with the salsa so I can get it in the pot. I will end up putting three bunches of cilantro in this whole batch. We got one more batch of tomatoes in the oven to go. Almost got our pot all the way full. And we're gonna get ready to do some canning here. I'm gonna bring this pot of salsa up to a boil. Just a light boil. And then we'll turn it back down to simmer. I did, however, take out this many peppers as I was going because I've been tasting the salsa as it's going along, and it is very spicy. So I throttled back on the peppers because, as with peppers, you just never know how spicy they're gonna be. So I say somewhere between 15 to 25 peppers in this whole batch, but sometimes 25 peppers is going to be extremely spicy compared to, you know, other times of the year you might get peppers and they might be not nearly as spicy. So, and I do not remove any seeds from my peppers as I'm making salsa out of them. So it's one of those things that you're just going to kind of have to judge as you go. I did not put the habaneros in there. So this is just like, it's gonna be something that you're gonna figure out for, you know, the taste of what you like. So I can give you, I will make sure I put my recipe, my basic recipe in the description, but you're really gonna have to kind of, you know, feel around for what you like personally, as far as like the amount of garlic you like, or the amount of cilantro, or how spicy you like it. So it's just something that I have to kind of juggle every year because the peppers are always different. But I make several batches of this throughout the year, the growing season, and so my next batch probably will be not nearly as spicy. I will probably cut the peppers back significantly so that I have some in the cupboard that is not as spicy. And then I will label this one spicy so that when they're getting jars of salsa out of the cupboard, the canning cupboard, that they know which ones are spicy and which ones are not. So we're gonna stir this up a little bit more. We've got our last batch of tomatoes in the oven right now. Looks good. And the next thing we're gonna do is we're going to, I've got water over here on the stove. Oops, excuse me. So the next thing we've got is, I've got some water boiling right here. This is where we're going to put our canning lids. So if we remember right, we had 12 wide mouth and 8 regular lids. So these come in packs of 12. So we're gonna need 8 out of here, and we'll use this whole pack of 12. So we're gonna bring this, I've been having this simmer, we're gonna bring it up and get it a little bit more to a light boil. And we're just gonna put our lids in here. It's easier if you break them apart before you put them in. They're easier to separate. I know you can, in the canning packs, when you get your jar lifter and stuff, there is a magnet that you can use to get these out of your pot, but I don't know what happened to mine, so I just use tongs. Okay. All right, we got those going. Put these back in. We'll put these back in our cupboard so we can use those extras. And we're gonna wait for this last batch of tomatoes to come out, and we're gonna be ready. Okay, our pot is ready. So We actually had the perfect amount of tomatoes. And like I said previously, I did hold out some peppers because it was pretty spicy. So now we're gonna get our jars ready. We've got our seals working over here. And over here, our canner is nice and warm. Whoop! That fogged that up. All right, our canner is nice and warm. So we've got it set on, it's like right under high. And then, like I said, once we get our jars in here, we'll turn it up to the canning setting. So we've got that going on here. The biggest thing when you're canning is you want to make sure that your jars are the same temperature as the water that you're bringing it into. So otherwise your jars will crack. So that's why we turned our salsa up to a boil, so we can get it up to a nice, not a rolling boil, but just a real, right before a rolling boil. It doesn't need to cook or anything, it's all cooked, but we just want to make sure that our temperature in here is equal to our temperature in our other pot. Okay, so we got our canning salt, and we're going to put a half a teaspoon in each of our quart jars, our pint jars. A half a teaspoon in each of our pint jars. Okay, I cannot find my funnel, so we're just going to go ahead and fill these up with the ladle. I've got a towel here that I'm going to use to wipe off the rim of the jars when I'm done, and then we'll put our seals on and we'll get it in the canner. So we want to leave about 1 inch of head space, so just right up into the neck of the jar. We're going to fill the rest of these, and then we're going to wipe off our rims. Alright, cleaned up my mess a little bit, cleaned off some of the jars, and then we're going to keep going. It is much easier if you can find your funnel. So I don't know what I did with mine, but I might have to order a new one. Okay, so we got our wet rag here. We're going to wipe this whole jar off. Then we're going to come up here on the top, right where our seal is going to go. We're going to clean this. Side. Okay, we've got our 8 jars here filled and cleaned up, and we're gonna just make sure everything looks good. We've got our seals in here. We have brought these to a boil, and we've turned it back down to simmer. We're gonna put our seals on. We're going to take our rings and we're going to put them on, just not super tight, just nice and snug. Okay, now we're going to move these over to our canner. All right, our water is ready. We're going to move our jars into the water bath. As you can see, the water displacement with the jars is giving us our 1 inch of water over the top of the canning jars. One more jar. We're just a hair bit over our line here. So I don't know if you can see this right here. It says max fill, so I'm just going to take a coffee cup and I'm going to scoop out a little bit of water so that... Okay, so I took off a little bit of water and now we're ready to put our lid on. We're going to turn our canner all the way up to canning. As soon as this comes to a full roaring boil, we'll start our timer. All right, we've got it up to a boil. We are going to start our timer for 10 minutes. Okay, our 10 minutes are up. I just shut off the burner and I'm going to let it sit here for 5 minutes. And then we're going to take out our jars. So I've got a towel ready behind us and I've got my little pinchers to pick up the jars with ready. So we're going to 5 minutes, we'll be ready to take them out and hope to hear some popping. Okay, our 5 minutes is up. We're going to take our lid off. We're going to take our jars out. We will set them on our towel right behind us. And we should just start hearing our jars popping, which means that they're sealing. We will leave them on the cloth for 24 hours. And then we will take off our seals and label our jars, and then we can put them away. Okay, it's our last batch. We are done. So we ended up with, let's see, we ended up with 22 jars. I ended up having to get out 2 extra jars because I had enough to fill 2 more. So 22 pints of salsa done, and I feel like that was a successful day. This probably took me approximately 5 hours, just for your reference. Okay, like I was saying, this probably took me about 5 hours to finish the salsa and can it, and I kind of clean up during the process. I actually even made dinner during the process because there's a lot of waiting time. So a lot of times what I'll find myself doing is I'll either be canning something else. Oh, that's a good sound. Or I will make dinner or dessert or do laundry or something like that. But it kind of has to be within the vicinity of the kitchen because, you know, it's only like 10 minutes or 15 minutes in between what you're doing. So you can get things done, it's just, it just takes a little bit of time. So, but it's all worth it in the middle of winter when you have fresh salsa. My family actually just devours it and goes through it like crazy. So I think this is our first year that we haven't ran out of salsa before the new salsa was coming on. So, and that's because I think I ended up doing 60 pints last year, but there's only just a few left. So I think between 50 and 60 is probably my optimal number of pints of salsa. So I hope everybody has a good night, and if you have any questions, just go ahead and put them down below, and I will actually put the recipe in the comments so that you guys can make your own salsa if you like.